The Newsday continues here on One News Now Business. I'm Diego Castro. Here are the biggest stories on the economic and corporate fronts. The Asian Development Bank trims its growth forecast for the Philippines due to inflation and global headwinds. The ADB now sees Philippine economic growth moderating at 5.7% this year from the April forecast of 6%. However, the lender is optimistic that growth will pick up next year. Household consumption and public spending on infrastructure and social services are seen to boost the economy's expansion. Downside risks, however, are likely to come from global headwinds like geopolitical tensions and a slowdown in major economies. The ADB also slashed its GDP projection for developing Asia to 4.7% from 4.8%. The ADB says weaknesses in China's property sector could hold back regional growth. Other challenges include high interest rates and threats to food security like the El Niño phenomenon and export restrictions by some countries. Developing Asia refers to the lender's 46 emerging member economies. The Finance Department Chief Ben Diokno cautions against suspending VAT and excise tax collection on fuel products. Recall that the House of Representatives has proposed a temporary suspension of fuel taxes to address rising pump prices. Diokno called the move short-sighted and ill-advised. He added that this could result in the government losing out on 73 billion pesos in revenue in the fourth quarter. Fellow economic team member and NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan also criticized the proposal, deeming it inequitable. Instead of suspending taxes, Diokno and Balisacan suggested providing targeted fuel subsidies to the vulnerable sector. The country's debt burden jumped to $7.46 billion in the first half of the year. Preliminary data from the central bank shows that this is 2.5 times more than the $2.92 billion recorded in the same period of last year. The latest figure translates to a higher debt-to-GDP ratio of 3.6% in end of June, from the 1.5% last year. The debt service burden represents principal and interest payments after rescheduling. From January to June, principal payments jumped by 125% to $4.18 billion. Interest payments also tripled to $3.28 billion. The country's foreign obligations increased by 9.5% to $111.92 billion in the end of June due to higher borrowings by the national government. We'll be back with more stories after the break. Keep it here on One News.
Natin higpitan ang pagbantay sa mga illegal na imported o smuggled na bigas. Kasi po, ang nangyayari po, itong mga smuggled na bigas, yung may-ari niyan, hindi po nila ipagbibili yan. Mag-aantay yan, iipitin nila yung supply hanggang tumaas ang presyo. Yun yung nakikita natin, kaya nagtaasan ang presyo ng bigas.
Marcos also wants NFA to increase buffer stock this harvest season to help bring down prices. When asked about his aspiration for 20 pesos per kilo of rice, here's what he said.
May chance lagi yan kung maayos natin ang production natin at maging maayos ang hindi tayo masyadong bagyuhin at yung mga tulong na binibigay natin sa mga farmer ay magamit na nila. Ang problema kasi at maraming nangyayari sa labas ng Pilipinas na kailangan natin mag-adjust kaya't nagkakaganyan.
The number of poor Filipino families continues to increase according to an Octa survey. The survey conducted in July found that 50% of families consider themselves as poor. That translates to around 13.2 million households, up from 11 million in the previous survey. Only 9% said they were not poor, while 41% could not say if they were poor. The polling firm said self-rated poverty significantly increased in Visayas and Mindanao. And those are the top business stories of the hour. I'm Diego Castro. Join us again at 2 p.m. We are One News. All sides, all the time.